When I say Robocop, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? Well, for me, it is always the picture of a dystopian society where OCP runs just about everything and some iconic villain to steal the show before Robocop delivers justice. Yes, it is usually pretty straightforward that way throughout the franchise, across movies and comic books. However, the 2014 comic series delivers a story so complicated and thrilling that it changed my notion about the general narrative. Here you will come across a villain who easily surpasses anyone Robocop has ever encountered, and I say this with confidence because this antagonist almost turns Detroit into a chaotic war zone and makes OCP collapse even under Robocop's watch. To add to the charm of the story, there are some secret connections of this villain as well, and John Killian, for me, is a villain who should have been picked for a movie adaptation. The story of this comic series is premised right after the events of the original movie, and it ignores the sequels completely. In this video, I will take you through the complete details of this comic series, and you will see what I am talking about when I say that Killian is the real deal among all the Robocop villains that you have seen so far. The story opens up with two people catching up after a long time, and from the look of them I can immediately tell you that these are not your regular citizens. One of them asks the other if he found religion while he was in jail for so long, and he replies that the only Jesus he found was a man named Zeus, whom he beat to death with a dumbbell. Clearly, this is a man who is a hardened criminal, and he talks about murder like describing a normal day at work. As it turns out, this is Killian, the dreaded villain who will test Robocop to his limits. He asks his friend about the current state of Detroit because it has been a long time since he has raised a little hell. His friend informs him that things are no longer how they used to be courtesy of Robocop. Just as Killian asks him more about Robocop, the scene cuts away to one of Robocop's violent missions alongside his partner, Officer Lewis. He takes on a group of armed thugs, and among the four of these armed men, one tries to outmatch Robocop with a grenade to his face. Of course, it doesn't work out at all, and what he gets in return is his eyes punched out of his sockets as he drops dead. His armed colleagues are now quick to fire indiscriminately, but he is far too good with his gun, and soon it is a closed crime scene with 4 casualties, and Robocop walks out with another mission accomplished. I really like how the story links Killian up to this moment because Killian and his friend are watching this all happen from a nearby rooftop. As Killian learns about how Robocop has changed the meaning of crime fighting in the city, he immediately has a plan to rattle things up. His years in prison have taught him that in order to show dominance, one has to take down the toughest opponent first, and he has Robocop on his mind. Killian's friend also tells him about the entire incident that got Murphy killed, and how OCP rebuilt him with a bunch of machine parts. Now he stands as a part man, part machine existence, and Killian is amused by how the old man of OCP got himself a gun that he can just point and shoot at old Detroit. He also realizes that the half-man part is the one that can be vulnerable, and I immediately understand the gravity of this villain because he already has a plan in mind. The next thing you know, 3 months have passed and the scene cuts away to Police Precinct Metro West, Old Detroit. As Manson walks in to have a word with Officer Lewis, he finds out that she is appearing for the detective exam, but she asks him to keep things quiet for now. Manson is curious about what happens to Robocop and Lewis working together when she gets promoted to a detective, and she seems optimistic enough that he will move on just fine with a new partner. Soon after, she goes out on another mission with Robocop, and this time they discover something strange. A man stops their car and complains about the cops stealing from him. Lewis is puzzled as she intervenes, only to find out that there is a new law in town that dictates any gun that is not registered with both the city and OCP will be confiscated. Lewis returns to the police station fuming about this ridiculous new law, and she questions the sergeant about this new development. Even Robocop says that his database does not honor the new law, and it goes against his programming. What really surprises me is how chilled out the sergeant is, and he just informs Lewis that she has been chosen to be in charge of implementing this new law. Basically, Robocop and Lewis will be tasked with bringing in all the guns, and Robocop will receive a few upgrades for the same. The argument is interrupted by the mayor and his men, who suggest that the new law will help return Detroit to its former glory. The old man of OCP is there as well, and he makes it clear that OCP has the rights to bring about such changes in the laws of the city. Lewis still tries to debate the decision by explaining that any attempt to confiscate the guns of the citizens will lead to violence. And then comes the shocking twist of the opening issue, as she is informed about a special council of concerned citizens who will help in the process. She is then introduced to a new citizen liaison, and guess who it is? Yes, the dreaded Killian, who is back with his long hair tied in a ponytail and a French-cut beard to suit his rough facial features. Talk about the plot thickening. I don't think it could get much better, and I am now completely hooked onto the narrative. The first issue of this comic series might have ended with Robocop and Killian shaking hands to work together, but I knew there will be a twist somewhere, and it comes soon enough. Instead of working with the cops, he changes sides immediately as he delivers a powerful speech to incite the public. He talks about his right to defend himself and how his gun empowers him before pointing fingers at OCP and the mayor who are taking away his right. He further adds that the police department in Detroit is completely inept, and they had to bring someone back from the dead, Robocop, to fight crime. Killian questions the basis of such a decision in a city where crime runs rampant and the citizens are forced to defend themselves more often than not. This fiery public speech gets a solid response from the crowd, and even though Officer Lewis is furious about this betrayal from Killian, Robocop points out that speaking out in public is an acceptable form of protest, and he has not broken the mandate yet. We then get a quick flashback of the intense crackdown on guns that Robocop and the other cops in the city have been carrying out. Some are even resorting to toy guns, but that hasn't resulted in crime slowed down. The police department has been left to do crowd control, and Killian continues his merry way of inciting the public. He interacts with a liquor store owner named Walter Hutch, and who agrees that his ability to protect himself has been taken away from him. He is now clueless about what to do if someone broke into his store, and Killian asks the crowd who is answerable if something goes wrong and someone robs his store. Killian even tries to instigate Robocop to get a response out of him, but the cyborg hero is duty-bound as ever, and he continues with his job of removing weapons that are not OCP approved. Killian's friend from earlier wonders if he enjoys poking the bear once the crowd has been dispersed by the cops. Killian just gives him a reality check of the town by saying how it is sitting on a powder keg, and one bad crowd can make things go horribly wrong and out of control. Is there a riot coming up? The scene then cuts away to southern Michigan, and three bikers who look like thugs ride into a bar. They try to intimidate the barkeeper and even misbehave with the poor girl, but there is a man sitting at the bar who intervenes. This is a well-built man with a stubble and a cap, and I can immediately tell that he means business. The altercation soon turns physical, and we quickly see how badass the man really is when he beats the three thugs to a pulp. Outside, two of his colleagues arrive in a car, and they run over their bikes. This is when the man is introduced as Nash, and he drives away in the car to Detroit with his two friends. Meanwhile, back in Detroit, Officer Lewis takes her detective exam, which doesn't seem to go too well, and Robocop is busy with the gun control mission. Just as he brings someone in for illegal weapon possession, he finds out that Officer Lewis has been taking the detective exam without informing him. She tries to explain that she didn't want him to know that she might be getting promoted and wouldn't be his partner anymore, but Murphy barely shows any emotions and coldly suggests that OCP and Detroit Police Department will just find him another partner. I wonder if he is really this emotionless, or if he is hiding his feelings, and even Lewis is left puzzled by his reaction. Meanwhile, the scene cuts away to Hutch's liquor store. Remember the man from earlier whom Killian heavily influenced during his speech? Just as he is about to close his store for the day, he gets some unexpected visitors in the form of Nash and his two buddies. Hutch immediately knows that this is trouble, but there is no escape, and he also doesn't have arms to defend himself. Just then, Killian walks in, and Hutch gets a momentary sense of false relief seeing him, assuming that he has come to save him. Instead, Killian just points out that the cops didn't take away guns from everyone, and pulls out a pistol and shoots Hutch dead. It turns out that Nash and his two buddies are former partners in crime for Killian, and they walk out of the store with Nash applauding the cold-blooded killer instincts of Killian. It becomes very clear to me that he is now working systematically, and he has something much bigger in mind than just causing random chaos and violence. The next part of the narrative takes you back 25 years, and this was the time when Killian was working as an active arms dealer. He gets a huge shipment of guns, and his colleague Nash is a bit suspicious about this mysterious party that they are dealing with here because it seems too good to be true. But Killian is just impressed by the collection, and he is only worried about finding sellers for these goods. He is delighted to have received so much firepower, and he knows that all he needs to do is somehow take the guns outside Detroit to sell them all over the world. However, his plans are interrupted by the cops who barge in, and he is forced to surrender. I think this is what got him a long jail time in the first place, but the backstory is put on hold for now because we jump back to the present-day narrative. The news reminds people about the new gun laws, and it also talks about how a former convict like Killian has emerged as a folk hero to the citizens of Detroit, who are not happy with the guns being confiscated. Killian has got the name Son of the Gun, and the news also reveals the death of Hutch at his liquor store. Robocop and Lewis head out to investigate the crime scene, and Murphy immediately remembers Hutch from the protests the previous day. Lewis rightly suspects that Hutch may have been killed to make a point against the gun law, but a female detective steps in and asks Lewis to hold her horses on the investigation and step away from the crime scene. But even though her argument is dismissed without any consideration, and her colleague Mason points out that such an argument will not be appreciated by OCP or the mayor, Robocop agrees with her point and realizes that something is fishy about Killian. On the other hand, Killian is having a gala time, and he has picked up a massive arms shipment that he claims is double the size of the time they got busted all those years ago. He also asks Nash if he ratted out about their business to get out of jail before him, but Nash quickly denies all such allegations. He says he just killed a few guards and escaped, and going by what I have seen of him so far, I cannot dismiss this entirely. He asks Killian why he never sought for parole, but this is one tough guy who says that he never wanted to beg and plead before the cops and just served his time dutifully. Now he has the chance to complete what he aspired for then, and the tunnels of the city are his playground because the cops never realized that he works from here. He says that half of all the arms stored in this place are sold back to the citizens of Detroit, while the other half goes out to buyers in other cities and war-torn countries. He is running a full-blown business here, right under the nose of the police department, and the protests in the city are the perfect distractions for him. Back at the police precinct in Metro West, Officer Lewis and Robocop try to dig up more information on Robocop. Surprisingly enough, they find nothing, and Murphy notes that even the arrest records of Killian have been wiped out of the system. This only confirms Lewis's suspicion about a bigger foul play, and she also thinks about another way to discover the records. They go old school and head to a room filled with handwritten files. The room is so messy that Lewis is sure nobody would take the trouble to remove Killian's file from there, and Robocop uses his fast reading skills to scan through the thousands of files in quick time. But, as they are busy trying to uncover the real motive of Killian, things take an ugly turn with the protest in front of Hutch's store. Killian is an extremely intelligent man, and he is there to incite the crowd once again with another fiery speech about how Hutch would have been alive if he was allowed to keep his gun. The female detective who had earlier been so rude to Lewis and dismissed her opinion outright now realizes that she may have been right, and the crowd turns rather violent during this protest. They need Robocop to do some crowd control here, but he is somewhere else with Officer Lewis. You see, they found out about Killian's arrest, and they head to the site from where he was taken in by the cops. Robocop walks into the site to explore it further, and this is the first time that we see some emotions in him about Lewis leaving to become a detective. Of course, he doesn't acknowledge his real feelings when confronted, and wants to talk about the mission at hand, but I find it quite amusing that he has a soft spot for his partner, even though he is partly cyborg now. As they explore the tunnels, they figure out that the tunnel networks cover the entire Detroit, and some even connect to outside the city. Lewis wonders if someone is using these tunnels to bring new guns to Detroit for distribution. And then comes the real shocker, when she finds the hidden stash of Killian and his men. As Robocop and Lewis stumble upon their warehouse, they see that the guns that are there are the same ones that have been confiscated so far by the cops to enforce the new gun law. But how did these guns even get here? And how deeply connected is Killian? As Robocop goes ahead to explore more of the place, a monster truck rams into him, and Killian's men are here. Nash is leading the charge, and Robocop is already slightly disoriented from the powerful blow. The next part is quite torturous for our cyborg hero, as he gets tied with iron chains and gets dragged with the monster truck, causing him significant damage. One of Nash's minions gets his hands on Officer Lewis, and this is all the motivation that Robocop needs to spring back into action. He frees himself and takes down 2 of Nash's henchmen, as Officer Lewis puts a bullet through Nash's head. Unfortunately, all the thugs are dead and they have nobody to lead them to Killian. But for now, Robocop is more concerned that another truck might have carried more of the firearms to the rioting citizens, and this will make the situation a lot worse. His suspicion is on point because that is exactly what Killian had planned for. He is out there inciting the crowd, and he is expecting Nash to bring in a huge shipment of firearms so that the emotions of the crowd can be used to push things out of control. When Killian realizes that something is wrong with Nash and his plan, he takes it upon himself to fuel the crowd reactions further, but just then Officer Lewis and Robocop ride into the riot site. Lewis rams the car into Killian the same way his men had done to Robocop, and she informs him that his trucks have been taken to be impounded. Killian is absolutely livid with the situation, but he doesn't have much of a choice as Robocop starts to do some crowd work himself. Then Officer Lewis does the unthinkable and addresses the crowd with something that is not even true. She claims that OCP and the mayor are changing the new gun initiative and the whole thing will be reconsidered. This changes the whole dynamic of the crowd, and even though Killian is initially confused about the sudden turn of events, he quickly gets a hold of the situation and attempts a winning speech to appease the crowd. But I am more concerned about the consequences of lying so blatantly, because OCP and the mayor will not be happy with this. When they get back to the police station, Officer Lewis and Robocop have an opportunity to set things straight between them by talking about the whole situation about Lewis becoming a detective. She tries to explain her stance, and Robocop stops her to say that he understands her desire to get promoted, and he also understands that he will never be promoted. He would never hold her back, and he knows that he will be issued a new partner once she is gone, and he will learn to live with that. Suddenly, the old man of OCP barges into the room with his men. He is furious about this little stunt pulled by Officer Lewis, and he is forced to revise the anti-gun initiative for now. What I find odd here is that among his men, Killian is also there, and this makes me wonder if Killian and the old man are somehow related for a bigger scheme. Once the old man is gone, Killian and Lewis have a little verbal duel, where Lewis accuses him of being related to Nash and his crimes, and Killian challenges her to prove it. But even Officer Lewis is convinced that Killian has something on the old man, and the OCP lets them look away from his actions. Then the mayor walks in once Killian leaves, and he congratulates Lewis before walking away. The reason is soon revealed when the police chief hands her a detective's badge and tells her that she is now a detective, even though she failed the test. This is because OCP wants her out of the way, and the police chief puts her in charge of all the unsolved murders in Detroit. Meanwhile, Killian is busy keeping his trail clear, and he wants the men arrested from the confiscated trucks to be killed in jail so that they don't rat him out under pressure. As for the loss of Nash, Killian is hardly bothered because the guy never had any vision according to him. Then, just as Killian shows his henchmen around, we get one major revelation. It turns out that Killian's gang has been robbing the OCP laboratories for the last few days, and the whole riot situation by tampering with the gun laws was just a distraction. Now, Killian has access to a lot of advanced OCP weapons, and I wonder what that means for Robocop. Just as Killian is arming himself to the teeth, Robocop has something very different in store for him. The scientists who work with fixing his damaged parts inform him that after the events of today, the mayor and OCP were forced to make some compromises, and one of them was to take away Robocop's firearm. So basically, Robocop is unarmed at a point when Killian and his gang have access to the finest of OCP weapons, and that surely doesn't look good. The consequences can be seen almost immediately, as Killian's thugs go about robbing a bank and they unleash an ED-209. This is an advanced mecha robot designed to be the perfect weapon, and it helps the thugs break open the bank's vaults and even takes on Robocop when he tries to intervene. It is not exactly the most evenly matched fight, but Robocop still brings it down with his stick. The female detective from earlier is back on the scene, and she is concerned to find the presence of ED-209 among the criminals because someone is using the old OCP tech to commit crimes. There is also an emotional outburst from Robocop as he is questioned by a journalist about how it feels to be neutered by the OCP. Clearly, the situation at hand is far from ideal, and as all this goes on, Detective Ann Lewis is busy scouting through all the case files, as she has been tasked. In her mind, she is determined to find out how Killian is connected, and she walks into the sergeant's room to discuss some of her theories. What she finds there surprises me as well, because the cop from earlier, Mason, is getting his head shaved. He plans to go undercover and infiltrate Killian's gang, and I don't know if that is such a good idea, given how ruthless and brutal Killian can be. The sergeant has planned it all because even he has guessed that Killian is behind all this, and he knows that the higher authorities will be of no help in this case. Of course, Detective Lewis cannot go undercover because Killian knows her too well, but Mason has a chance to blend in. Meanwhile, Robocop is busy getting his repairs because the ED-209 did some significant damage to his system. Dr. Tyler is trying to get him a few upgrades, and just then Lewis walks in and gets told that she is no longer allowed in this facility. Things are changing with OCP, and Dr. Tyler is not necessarily happy about them. It's just that she has no choice, and this only makes Lewis more determined to find answers. She goes to the OCP-owned prison cell to speak to the drivers of the trucks who were arrested earlier. The warden tells her that they haven't spoken up yet, and suddenly Lewis and the warden witness something horrific. A group of criminals walk into the cell holding the 3 drivers, and they are all executed in a matter of seconds. This was supposed to be a solid trail that could be followed to unearth the crimes of Killian, but it closes rather disappointingly. On the other hand, Robocop is dragged out onto the streets after he learns about another attempted bank robbery. Only this time it was not a robbery attempt at all, and just a plan to bring him outside. This is because the thugs have a bigger gun up their sleeve in the form of the ED-2000X, which is far more advanced than the ED-209 that Robocop took down earlier. However, what really catches my attention is the quick glimpse of a meeting between OCP's old man and Killian. The old man is not happy with how Killian has handled his new gun initiative, but Killian just quickly reminds him of the past. Yes, I had guessed it right because the two definitely have some history. Killian reveals that the old man had hired him all those years ago to fund the early days of OCP by selling guns illegally to other countries. Now he uses this to blackmail the old man into staying out of his way as he makes the future of Detroit into a war zone to fuel his own agenda. Well, the old man should have known better when he dealt with someone like Killian. Back with Robocop, he is not doing too well against the ED-2000X without his gun, and what makes it worse for him is that the ED-2000X is extremely fast and agile, and Robocop was never built for speed. He gets a proper whopping from the mean machine as it shoots through his systems, and the thugs get it all on tape. The plan was not to eliminate Robocop entirely, but to send a message, and the job is done as the ED-2000X walks away. Detective Lewis is exploring Hutch's closed store once again to look for evidence, and she encounters the female detective who has been leading the case. The detective invites Lewis for dinner, and I know this is about to be interesting because so far, she has been extremely rude to her. As for Mason, he walks right into the den of Killian with one of his thugs, who promises to get him a place in the gang. Mason poses as Dylan, and slips past the initial scrutiny. He then comes face to face with Killian, who is busy with more work in the facility. He plans to make some upgrades on the ED-2000X, and he has everything working in his favor. Robocop's defeat at the hands of the ED-2000X will get him buyers from all over the world, because what better way to show the potency of a war machine than actual battlefield evidence? Mason tries to get him to speak more about his business, and Killian tells him all about his history with OCP as an illegal arms broker. Now, Detroit is just his testing ground for all the new weapons. Meanwhile, Agent Lewis's dinner invitation doesn't go too well. I mean, it starts off alright, but it soon becomes clear that the female detective doesn't want her meddling in such serious matters because of what is at stake. She is someone who has learned to live with the corrupt system without disturbing things too much, and she is concerned about the well-being of her family, which doesn't align with the free-spirited nature of Detective Lewis. Robocop is in some serious crisis here as he finds Dr. Tyler once again for the repairs after sustaining a lot of damage following the encounter. Tyler is helpless because she cannot provide him with a firearm without OCP's permission, but she does give him something that has come from OCP, new legs that will allow him to be a lot faster than before. In fact, he will also get enhanced strength and agility, which might give him a better chance in fighting crime. Back in Killian's den, Mason gets his cover blown while trying to click a few pictures of the facility. Killian menacingly appears and reveals that he had known the undercover plan all along, and this was just a plan to catch him red-handed. Well, I think you can say say goodbye to Mason because Killian is not a man of mercy. See, the thing with running a huge gang is that some gang members will not always toe the line. In this instance, a small group of Killian's thugs plan a heist of their own with the ED-2000X. They stop an OCP van carrying machine parts, but they are in for a nasty surprise because this was all a trap set by Robocop, who is waiting inside. He makes quick work of the thugs, and even the ED-2000X doesn't have it easy this time because Robocop is a lot faster and stronger than before. With no real combat training, the machine is no match for Robocop's human instincts, and as the icing on the cake, the detective makes a crucial arrest. Killian's right-hand man Wyatt is taken in for questioning, even though he tries to keep a tough front without ratting out his master. At the police station, the entire department is shocked by the condition of the body of Mason, who has been sent back with multiple injuries and mutilations, with OCP engraved on the chest. This only makes interrogating Wyatt all the more important, and even though he refuses to speak at first, Robocop brings out a sharp dagger from his arms and puts it to his neck, getting him to sing like a canary. He spills the information on the secret hideout at a warehouse on the east side, and this is all the police department needs to plan a major operation. Killing a cop will not be let off so easily, and it is time for some payback. Detective Lewis is going her own way, but her trip to the OCP office to find some answers ends in disappointment because she is turned away without a warrant. But she comes across an accidental discovery that changes the case completely. A crazy homeless man tells her about the CCTV cameras that have been placed everywhere by OCP, and Lewis realizes that accessing the footage might hand her some valuable evidence against Killian. She goes to Tyler to get her to access the database, and what she finds there blows her mind. She has the perfect footage that shows Killian shooting Hutch, and this has been captured by a CCTV outside the store window. Things start to look even more promising when the old man gives Robocop his gun back, acknowledging that he was ignorant of them to take it away in the first place. I guess it is time for a fair fight. Killian has found out about Wyatt's arrest, and he prepares for the consequences. His first plan is to lay a trap for the cops who will surely come to his hideout, and his second plan is to call the press and make a confession. When the cops walk in, the ED-2000X is right there to unleash hellfire on them, along with Killian's thugs, and many of the cops fall in the gunfight. Robocop is there to even the scores, and what follows next is probably one of the most intense action sequences of this comic series. Robocop gets attacked, with everything from grenades to the constant shooting from the ED-2000X, but his new avatar has the resilience to withstand it all. He has figured out a flaw in the ED-2000X's system, that when he is too close to the machine, it cannot hit him with the guns. Murphy is now too fast to get close to the robot, and he finally manages to destroy it. Killian's thugs surrender quickly after watching this, realizing that they do not stand a chance. John Killian remains free, but most of his gang members are arrested, and this becomes a huge piece of news. Meanwhile, Killian takes to the next phase of his plan and holds a massive press conference. He plans to reveal everything about his OC connection, and the old man is prepared for a massive backlash as he asks for his lawyers. However, Detective Lewis changes things completely when she walks in mid-press conference and shows everyone the video footage of Killian murdering Hutch. After he is cornered, Killian decides to make a run for it, but Robocop is there at the right time to apprehend him, and he is finally taken in. It is also a moment of relief for the old man, but the story is far from over. In fact, what comes next takes me by surprise because I expected a very different response from OCP following the arrest of Killian, which effectively takes care of all their troubles. When a damaged Robocop walks in for repairs with Detective Lewis, they are informed that Dr. Tyler has been removed because of her earlier cooperation with Lewis against company policy. The most shocking new development is that Robocop will not be fixed because the budgetary constraints do not permit OCP to continue with him. He will remain in his depleted condition because there will be no repairs coming. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, Killian manages to give the cops a slip as he is taken to jail in a car. 2 cops are shot dead in the process, and Killian now has a different plan altogether. Earlier, he was going for the love and support of the people of Detroit, but now he intends to use Robocop to ruin OCP, and I have no idea how he plans to do that. This is what I really love about this comic series, that there is nothing predictable about the narrative. The second you think you have a hang of the story, something drastic happens to change things entirely. What comes next is another chaotic run as Robocop and his new partner, Officer Kaplan, are ambushed by a group of thugs. They make a couple of arrests, but the citizens are still on their edge, and a riot-like situation arises once again. The mayor tries to step in and reprimand the cops, but the public opinion seems to be against him him this time around. Detective Lewis is still keen on finding out the exact connection between John Killian and the OCP, and the old man watches it all from his chamber through the numerous CCTV cameras that he has placed. His rant reveals his disappointment at not being understood by those who lack his vision. His dreams of a better future for the city will come with sacrifices and even some unfair practices, but for the old man it is all worth it. Suddenly his chain of thought is broken by a call from Killian, who wants to settle scores with OCP. He has a lot of hate for the old man who let him rot in jail for years for doing his dirty work, and even though he tries to make amends now, Killian is in no mood to listen. Back at the police station, things are not ideal for Detective Lewis, who gets quite a bashing from the sergeant for disrespecting the mayor earlier. She has the right ideas about wanting to get Killian before OCP can, but her ideas are of no use without assistance from the higher authorities. Even Robocop is barely holding it together without any repairs to his system. The female detective from earlier, Jansen, is also apprehensive about pursuing this case because she fears getting fired, and Lewis is all by herself with this one. All of a sudden, Killian unleashes another masterstroke. He makes a broadcast on TV and reveals all about OCP using the CCTV cameras to invade the privacy of the people. He says enough to rile up the public opinion against the police department and OCP, and there is a riot-like situation once again. The old man tries his best to negate this by doing some positive publicity. He tries to convince the people that the surveillance is for their safety, but it is a little too late and people are already out on the streets demanding a free state without the private corporation's interference. At the OCP headquarters, it is a scene of panic as some of the members of the board even suggest moving to Cleveland temporarily till things cool down. But the old man is determined to stay put in order to fulfill his dreams. Outside, the protesters are starting to turn violent, and Detective Lewis and Jansen failed to track down Killian from his broadcast link. Officer Kaplan, who is Robocop's new partner, is worried about the consequences for the cops if they fail to contain the crowd, and Murphy steps up to make an attempt to pacify the angry protesters. It works, but not like he would have expected, because the crowd disperses only after one of the protesters throws a firebomb at him, lighting him up. After they manage to extinguish the fire, Robocop asks Lewis to be fast about tracking down Killian, and he is called to the precinct for support. Meanwhile, Killian has other things in mind, as he walks right into the mayor's office. He threatens the mayor, and I love how the mayor's security doesn't care about the threat to his life and walk away to save themselves. But what comes next is probably the biggest twist of the story, as Killian starts talking about his true origin story. It is revealed that he is actually the bastard brother of the old man. Back in the day, the old man's father was a rich fellow who had relationships with a prostitute, and one day when Killian was still young, he shot his father dead. He grew up in an orphanage, and later he reconnected with his brother because they both shared a similar futuristic vision. However, when it suited the old man, he was quick to sacrifice Killian for his advantage, and now he wants revenge of the highest order. Killian then extorts the codes to the OCP prison cell out of the mayor before shooting him dead. And I know already that he will now seek out his elder brother and there will be one final showdown. Back at the precinct, the situation worsens and Robocop is the last ray of hope to control the violent protesters. He is even willing to lay down his life if it means that the protesters have an outlet to take out their fury. But his partner, Officer Kaplan, offers a different solution. Earlier, it seemed like Kaplan was not happy about Robocop being his partner, but he shows that he is a true cop in the middle of this crisis and flies Murphy in a helicopter to control the situation. As for Killian, he frees the violent inmates from the prison in order to unleash hell on Detroit, which is his way of destroying the legacy of the old man. The next bit is all about Robocop's heroics as he takes on the freed inmates and the other cops hold the line in front of the OCP headquarters. But, unknown to all, Killian slips into the building and makes his way to the old man. It is time for a final confrontation, and the old man is not someone who gives up easily. In fact, in a surprise attack, he stabs Killian with a pen, even though it does little to take him down. He has the old man at gunpoint and he is about to pull the trigger when Robocop intervenes and shoots his fingers off. Killian is arrested, but Murphy does not obey the orders of the old man when he asks him to kill the man. The old man pulls out something unique from his hat, and it just shows that he is always the boss irrespective of Robocop's presence. He just utters the word Prometheus, and Robocop goes into a complete shutdown. It turns out that he had prepared for a fail-safe system for such a scenario. He then shoots Killian dead, and the ladders fall from the top of the OCP headquarters. Outside, the crowd has been successfully handled by the cops, even though that gets Jansen shot and injured. It's not the perfect ending, not yet. In order to hide his criminal connections, the old man ensures that Killian gets a hero's funeral, and the real heroes are neglected. Robocop is supposed to remain out of commission, and he has the perfect plan to put everything behind him and make a fresh start. smart. Of course, he did not count the brilliance of Detective Lewis. You see, earlier with Jansen, Lewis had gained access to some secret OCP database, and she now knows all about Killian and the old man's connection. After the funeral ceremony of Killian that is attended by the old man, Lewis suddenly gets inside his car. She corners him with the facts that she knows, and the old man is smart enough to realize that if she decides to be a whistleblower, then the future of his company is doomed. The solution is to try to strike a bargain, and so she does. And guess what her conditions are? She ensures that Robocop will be repaired back to his former glory, and she will always be his partner, irrespective of her detective status. OCP will not intervene in their police actions, and the old man will remove the failsafe system installed within Robocop so that he never has to work with such preset guidelines. The old man agrees to all of this because he knows that he really doesn't have a choice. And the next thing you see in the final panels of the comic series is everything back to the perfect order. Robocop and Lewis are partners like the good old times, and Kaplan is teamed up with Jansen. As they head out to fight crime once again, Robocop asks Lewis to call him Robocop instead of Murphy, suggesting that he has come to terms with his cyborg nature. Now it is finally a happy and complete ending. I don't know about you, but after going through the entire narrative, the first thing that came to mind was why someone never turned this into a movie. I mean, does it get any more cinematic? You have everything from the crime-ridden Detroit City, a great crisis, and a great solution. Moreover, the story delivers the perfect villain in the form of Killian, and I don't think it can get better. I hope you enjoyed this detailed rundown of such an iconic comic series, and let me know in the comments below what you think of this epic saga, where Robocop meets his greatest adversary.